The reality is it's still an experimental. You cannot go through all the classifications of the studies that have to be done and get to an honest understanding of its safety and efficacy in the period of time that's gone on.
Welcome to Flyover Conservative Podcast with David and Stacy Whited, where we break down current events and examine culture through the lens of conservative Christian values. Hello, Flyover family. As you can see, we are not in our studio, but we received a phone call last night saying, you've got to get this information out. And when that happens, we jump.
So we got to hopping. You're going to love what you're going to hear today. Some great stuff in store. This show is brought to you by MyPillow.com, the sponsor of Flyover Conservatives, but also a sponsor of a little something called a cyber symposium that's coming out this week, August 10th, 11th, and 12th. Tune in. You got to know. You need to be able to be prepared to have intelligent conversations at the water cooler or with your neighbor or your brother-in-law. You know, when they call, there's going to be a lot of revelations coming out this week that I think are going to be huge. And so you got to check it out. Mike Lindell made this happen on his own.
Exactly.
He's funding this. He's supporting it. He's making it happen. So let's fund and support him as well with something, only if you need it. But sheets, pillows, dog beds, whatever you need, mypillow.com, up to 66% off. Everything in the store. Use promo code FLYOVER.
Do it like you do on the deal. Promo code
FLYOVER.
I love that. So glad you're joining us today. Wait till the end of the video. You can get more information on Cyber Symposium.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Special treat, emergency introduction. We interrupt your regularly scheduled program because we got a call from one of the biggest movers and shakers and that we know on the planet. Yesterday, we were invited to listen in on a conference call that we're going to talk about just a little bit with some of the best minds in several different arenas. And this is one of the biggest weeks that we've had in 2021.
Yes.
Lots of things going on, lots of things happening in lots of places, and they need to be addressed because when I consider like the field, you know, you guys, these like digital warriors, those you guys are all on board saving America, you know, that everybody's doing their part.
Right.
You got to know.
Waking up, speaking up, and showing up.
You got to know what's going on, and so that you're aware, because you're going to hear mixed messages, hear things from lots of places, and you want to know, have a way to interpret maybe even some of the messaging that you hear coming through mainstream media this week. So
today we have the honor of having the amazing Juan O Savin. Juan, welcome! Yay!
Well, I don't know if I deserve quite that much accolades, but I'm definitely here, and we're definitely trying to raise the awareness amongst the population about what's going on here. God's got an army, and this is that moment when that army of believers is going to be counted on. But we do war in a different way. We don't do it in the flesh. We don't do it with, guns and bullets and things like that. We engage amongst our own communities, amongst our own people, even within our churches, not to go to war, not to have a civil war, but to win over hearts and minds, to understand things, to think again. And this is that moment where we have to stand up and be counted, to convey information. And even if people around you weren't willing to listen before, people are waking up every day. This situation with this compulsory, you got to get this, you got to have it, you got to take this. And we all know what I'm talking about. Yep. Does it make sense, really? And so on this other video that you've posted from the Zoom call we did yesterday, you have doctors and you have lawyers and you have coaches, you have people that are very knowledgeable in those fields who are talking authoritatively about what's happening in America, in the world, and the consequences, good and bad, of doing or not doing what you're being what's being forced on you. Now, let's just say that for this little presentation, I'm not going to go into the details because you can put this on YouTube, direct people over to the other platforms where this is available. But Here's my concern. If this damages, especially young men, it causes heart damage that never, ever gets reversed and is cumulative. The crisis is we're being forced to do something with lifetime consequences. And some of those may be short lifetimes as a consequence. It also means that we're talking about infertility, both for men and for women as a result of this. In that other platform where you've posted that meeting, we have doctors with credentials to outer space. One of the doctors who was over at Baylor, a Christian guy with so many credentials that other doctors go, I mean, that's like 5 or 6 careers. One of the most accredited doctors on the planet. And he put his career to the side at Baylor to tell you the truth about what's happening. Another guy that left Pfizer left his job because of what he had to say as a matter of conscience, because they could not be part of something that is going to take life and act like it's okay. Look, if it's about money, that's the thing with the coaches. They're sitting there, they're putting their careers on the line. They're going up against the administrations in these colleges to tell you that there's a problem, and they will not be part. They will not compel people to do something that clearly makes no sense. An experimental item cannot be forced on the population. That goes back to the Nuremberg trials, 1947. You cannot force a population to take an experimental anything. And that includes in the military. Saying that you have to have this in order to remain in the service, that is wrong. And I would say it's criminally wrong. Those officers, those senior commanders, and all the way down to a private, if you receive an order that is illegal on its face, you have the responsibility, not just the right, the responsibility not to carry out an unlawful order. If you are being ordered to take something that's experimental, you can volunteer, you can agree to it, but you cannot be ordered to take an experimental. And that's what this fight's going to be about. It's going to be cleared, okay, and it's going to be okay. Well, there's a bunch of us out there. They're going to have a little bit of a fight over that. Is it being cleared by political measures, or is it being cleared because it in fact has passed all the examination and been determined to be safe? And if it hasn't actually done that, but it's just being waved through, is that lawful? And remember, lives are on the line. In the lawsuit that was filed in California a couple of weeks ago, from the government's own records, showed 45,000 deaths in 3 days after the application of this to the population. The numbers are absolutely astronomical, and then that particular one is deaths. What about injuries?
Hospitalizations.
One of the doctors involved in this says that the real number is about 75% of the young males taking this have heart damage that's measurable. Any heart damage, the heart doesn't repair. When you kill off or damage those cells, are damaged for the rest of your life. On what planet does it make sense to force young men, or to compel them even if you want to be on the field playing, if you want to be able to be recruited, if you want to be able to be a coach going out and recruiting or getting people playing, you have to take an experimental anything. And it's been mandated. Well, mandated isn't standing on you and sticking it in your arm. Mandated means that you don't get to play in their court, in their field, etc. Well, okay, if it's a life and death question, and by the way, even if you survive, if you're sterile, that's the end of you. That's the end of your line. You have no further part in humanity's ongoing history.
Man, that is so true. And listening to Coach Dave last night, that was so inspiring.
And for those of you listening, the call that we're referencing, it's available at rumble.com/flyover conservatives. It's available there. We'll put the link down below of where you're watching it now, but this may get shared and put at different places. So you can see there on your screen, it's been placed there. rumble.com/flyover conservatives, where they kind of value free speech. Some of these topics are not allowed to be brought up in different platforms, which we're going to ask you, as listeners today, several questions. One, why is that? And who benefits? And first question out of the gate is, even the discussion that we're having, even the information of putting, two different iPod cases here. It's like, we can't talk about this one. We can only talk about this one. Well, why can you only talk about one and you can't compare the two and make a wise choice? There's only a one-sided argument and on life and death issues. And so it's a very important time that people ask themselves great questions. And there's another comment, Juan, on this as we go along. Some of the people that Juan has brought together and made their information available in one cohesive place, they're some of the smartest people in the world. The internet's a crazy place, and in the notes sometimes you'll see people make comments. Ben Carson's a racist. Ben Carson's stupid, and you're like,
they obviously don't know Ben Carson or his credentials.
He might be one of the smartest humans that's ever lived,
right?
And they'll still be way stupid. Why? Because he's a conservative. Because he does not speak in line with what the state wants him to say. And we're in a moment where even preparing a video like this, I have to go through the same thought process as if I lived in communist China, where you have a social credit score that can be affected by jaywalking, of what is going to be allowed. It has to be in alignment with the state, with authorized, pre-approved agendas that the regime will allow. And so you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why can we not discuss and weigh out this information? And Juan's made available some of the greatest minds from different arenas that are just great leaders as well. They have growth platforms, put them together. So anyway, Juan, this will be available at rumble.com/flyover conservatives. I just wanted to make sure people knew that. And that's kind of the first question, is why can these things not be discussed?
Well, because, this is about somebody has an agenda. And one of the things I asked in that other video, and I'll ask you again here, who benefits? If our military is incapacitated, look, that's mostly young men. We have women there too. They're also damaged by this. With that in mind, who benefits? If America is shut down internally, if America is damaged in its military, if America is damaged at the corporate level where we can't produce things, Reagan said the business of America is business. If we're shut down, who benefits? Who is then able to take over the business? Who is able to overrun us, overwhelm us, or take advantage of the fact that we have to pull in and can't assist our friends in other places that we have alliances with militarily? One of the things is that after taking this thing, you have a radically increased risk of clotting, because this thing causes clots. It has to do with the way that it attaches to blood cells. They're not smooth anymore. They don't go down the veins and arteries smoothly anymore. And they hang up in the capillary veins, which is the small veins, especially around the heart and the groin. It also affects the brain. Do you know that the long-term effects, if you survive it with the heart and you survive it with the groin, and the testicles or the ovaries in women. The other place that it goes is to the brain. And what we're looking at is the likelihood, they've already seen some of it, according to some of the doctors, of a variation of mad cow disease. So if our population, if longer term, the effects don't show up for a year or 2 or 3, and some significant, if it was 5% of the population had a severe reaction, who cares for them? What's the energy, the expense, the time? Because some member of your family is less functional and you have to carry them. Okay. How much less efficient do we become as a society, a people, a family? You know, it's very hard. We all know families who have some family member who had a disability from birth or something happened during the course of their life. Even elderly parents where they have, disorders and difficult remembering or working or being able to function on their own. How much of a boat anchor is that to the way they function and can function? And we do it because it's part of our responsibility as family to care for those that can't care for themselves. That's part of our responsibility within our own families, and we do it. But if that number radically increases, what's the breaking point individually in society? It's one thing if a larger family has someone in the family that one of the family members has to be helped, and you got several people to throw in and help. It's another thing when it's several family members, or if they aren't there anymore, those young men that have children and wives and are serving in the service and they're gone, and who's going to care for them? This is a very serious subject. So there's an attack on us as a people, attack on us as a business operation. There's an attack on us on the politics. Will it be a classic constitutionally operated government of the people, by the people, for the people? Or will it be a government controlled by oligarchs who then cancel out your First Amendment rights and you can't do anything about it? Is it a government by oligarchs who decide that they will plaster you with every kind of advertising, every kind of news story, every kind of information that drives the idea that you shouldn't have Second Amendment rights? It's oligarchs that are driving this idea that you should be monitored in every facet of your life through public platforms and government platforms, and violation of your Fourth Amendment rights. Okay. And they search through everything you have, sift through it, know every detail of your life, and pass it around amongst themselves, so that it's a type of enslavement. Chains put on every aspect of your life and function. These are in violation of, in contradiction to the Constitution, which is the contract between the citizens of America and its government. And if the government begins to violate those agreements in the Constitution with the citizens, we got a problem. And if somebody, again, who benefits? If somebody is forcing some action inside our military that has the potential, the likelihood of damaging some significant portion of the military's ability to function, what's the number? Is it 2%, 5%? What key people can you lose, or they're not operable for some period of time, where you reach a breaking point and then the logistics don't work? You can't field everything. Just to keep one tank in the field, it's the supply chain of people is like 70, 80 people. maintenance, fuel supply, the logistics for parts, the transport. There's so many aspects, the communications, let alone aircraft, transport aircraft, fighter aircraft, ships at sea. At what point in the infrastructure are you unable to keep the supply routes for maintenance going? And who's making those decisions? We have to think bigger here. And my question to all those people in positions of authority related to the military, you need to do your research, and you need to think about, is what you're being compelled, required, mandated to do, is that a lawful order? Does that make sense? And if not, who's going to stand up and say no? On what basis? You have to understand, even us raising that question, it's just a question: is what's being required legal?
Yeah.
I had someone very close to me years ago who got into a very dire situation because a location they worked at, which was very, very serious infrastructure location in our national defense structure, was being told to do certain things. And at a certain point, he asked a question into the, there's a certain mechanism where, because you're working on black projects and you can't disclose everything, and you could ask a question in the blind, supposedly, that wouldn't reveal what your position was and what exactly you're doing on. You wouldn't be violating any of your oaths, but you could still find out and get verification legally that you're doing stuff that's legal. It's quite bizarre. But it's what has to happen when you're working in black projects. And he asked the question, is what I'm doing legal? And for that, they literally wanted to pick him up and put him in an insane asylum, because to even ask the question is crazy. And it was, if they'd got him there, he would have come out a vegetable. I'm certain. We were able to get him through that situation, but and he's a very close friend. But this is not an uncommon story, and what he was being told to do was not legal. That's why he asked the question. He didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. Look, go listen to that presentation. Those are real people with serious credentials. The purpose of that was aimed at coaches and players in college and professional sports. And the owners want the guys to go on the field so they can make money and pay the bills. I understand that. The colleges want the players to go out there and generate revenue for the college with all the broadcasting. But the other side of the coin is you have coaches, and you have in both college and professional sports saying, with what we know now, I can't be part of that. I cannot ask people to put their life on the line, their health on the line, their future on the line over this. And by the way, one additional thing, the largest group that is not complying with these mandates thus far is the Black community. Well,
that is so good. I mean,
because there's a common thread there of not necessarily trusting the government.
Yeah.
And that kind of a negative history there.
Well, I mean, it's they've been used as guinea pigs for experiments many times, and we have a history there. They're not wrong to be afraid, to be saying no. And I, within the sports community, where there is such a large percentage, it's a disproportionate percentage for who knows whatever all reasons. You can, go off in the weeds on it, but I'll just tell you what, these guys, I know some, I have friends they're black athletes, and I just am amazed at just their unreal skill sets, and it's trained in, it's by the way they grow up, it's cultural, it's a disproportionate percentage of college and professional sports, and I think it's undeniable. Now you got people from all over the world that are great in all different races and all that, and people have different specialties. You get into some of the sports, and you're not going to get the 6'4" guy that's 250, 300 pounds able to do acrobatics very well anyway. Right. Okay, we all have our place.
Well, and it's been established there, Juan, with years of the NFL denying there was any connection between repeated blows to the head and brain damage down the road. Years.
Well,
just straight denying. So, I don't think there's this feeling among NFL players that they have that the NFL is working in their best interest. Right. I don't think there's a feeling among the general population that medical doctors necessarily are going to advise. And it wasn't very long ago, doctors were advertising for cigarettes. And say, hey, these are good for you. There's no problem. There's you have to get your own information, your own source. And you mentioned the Air Force, was it Muskegee Airmen? I forget the phrase.
Tuskegee Airmen. Red Tails.
That's one. You get the NFL concussion, history. There's a history of people that have a financial bent that they benefit financially from your compromised exposure, to something.
We had this stuff where they were actually injecting him with gonorrhea, for Pete's sakes. It was horrible. There's a lot of just horrendous stories there. But my main point here is this: if you're going to mandate that you have to do this, and conversely, this largest community in the sports area says no, what you're actually doing is you're disenfranchising black players and black coaches from participating, in these sports settings, in these college settings, in these educational settings. Look, it's not just athletes, students like that. If they're going to say, I'm not going to get in compliance with this, then you don't get to attend for educational purposes. You're disenfranchising this whole segment of society, this black community. This is attack, you could say, in large measure against the black community if they're the ones that are going to be in non-compliance. But my attitude on that is good on you. Slaves no fucking more. Okay, and that goes for all of us. If they want to lead the way, have at it, because I'm right there with you. They're absolutely correct. They have an apprehension about being included in this way for good reason, and the rest of us should understand and be following along. I would say, though, that all these communities, it's just that in the sports community, that particular thing stands out, especially because they're a larger segment in the sports community. But in the broad society, huge numbers of police officers, huge numbers of postal workers. There was a conference call I was aware of last week involving a very large number of postal workers seeking legal advice on whether or not to do this. Tyson Chicken, all of their workers are talking about a system-wide, we'll shut it all down if we have to do this. And it's interesting in that particular community, they see the effects of what's put into this crop of chickens that they do. They're very sensitive to the fact that, these things have an effect on people too. And so there was stuff raised in those conversations that I thought was genius. So out across, no matter what they want to say, about what you should and shouldn't be doing, and if you're a good American or not, because you're cooperating or not cooperating. The reality is it's still an experimental. You cannot go through all the classifications of the studies that have to be done and get to an honest understanding of its safety and efficacy in the period of time that's gone on. Now, let me just say this. There's a lot of people, they're going to say that the last president somehow did us wrong because we went to this lightning speed to get this deployed. Let me just tell you what the story is there. Remember, this was a plan all along. Somebody wanted to make this happen all along. This didn't just happen last year. Somebody had designs to pull this off. Who benefit? Who benefits by selling these products? Who benefits by mandating these products? Who benefits by deploying them in all these industries here and shutting down America, shutting down our military, shutting us off from each other, stopping our ability to procreate? Who benefits? And then you flip that around, looking at this whole situation. Will we rise above it or not? This last president knew this was coming when he accelerated the process to come up with a solution based on what was being presented out in the world. You have all the experts, they're already embedded throughout society, and they had a plan. Remember the scene in Red October where Ramius, his crew is up on the surface because they've gotten off boat thinking that nuclear material is loose. And then you have the American crew that comes on through a mini sub and then joins them. And then suddenly another sub fires on them. So what does Ramius do? He turns right at the torpedoes that were heading for him. And then he has the crew, this American crew that's on his boat, accelerate not just to 100%, but to 115% of total power, past the tested range of the ship, rated range, speed range of the ship. The fastest the reactors could push that thing, heading right at the torpedoes. When the other sub captain had fired, he'd just gotten into range of firing off. So he was a long distance out. And so they have a few minutes to close the distance. Now, why is this important? Because when torpedoes leave the tube over time, historically, you can have a malfunction. You can have a fin locked in the wrong position. You could have props that don't work right. And that thing can come around in a great big circle and hit you. It can lose the homing on what was supposed to come back and hit you, or some other ship in your group that you don't want to hit. It could hit your guy instead of somebody else, because a lot of times they run in packs. So with that in mind, they don't let them arm until they're most of the way to the target. They know what the range is to the target, so they just let it arm. So based on the revolutions of the prop, certain timing things inside the torpedo, it doesn't arm right off the bat. And so when Ramius closed the distance, he moved inside of that percentage where this was armed. Let's say it was 80% of the distance to the target before the torpedoes could arm themselves and actually blow up. Prior to that, they're just a dud. By closing the range at maximum speed, at warp speed, he got inside the arming distance. And when the torpedoes hit the sub, they just bounced off because they hadn't armed yet. They were duds. Now, in racing to get this ready for people to use, remember what the former president did prior to the solution coming out for the public to everybody has to take it. He got sick and he came back and said, yeah, I took, these cheap medications and solved the problem. I feel fine. I felt bad for a day or two and I was fine. He let you know that those cheap over-the-counter medications do the job. You didn't have to have this thing that isn't even what they say it is. Okay. The experimental thing isn't even what they say it is. And we talked about that in the other video. So with that in mind, he showed you that you don't have to do this to get well. And then when it did show up, what was the deal? The other guys, the bad guys, the people who are trying to fraud you on this, the people who have some other benefit, hidden benefit that they're not revealing, those people wanted you to walk around with a diaper on your face for the next 3 or 4 years and then come up with a solution after you're well trained, and only because you take this solution that they've come up with and that has all these dire consequences. So we raced to getting it to the point where they had to start reversing this. I know it seems twisted. I know it seems baked. It's just the way it is. And you're waking up this huge population. What's going on? Now you have to turn your brain on. Now you have to turn your brain on. It's not even one time they want you to do something. Now they're on the third one. It only works for 3 months. So now you got to get a third one. You have to, by the time they're done, you'll have to take it every month, because they're saying that every month it's varied enough. You need a new shot. They can't even test the latest version to come up with a solution. And they're going to say they have a new solution every month. It's genocide, literally. Your immune system cannot take it. These people know it. Who benefits? If they get you started and look, what's the first group that they're going to absolutely, because they control them from the inside? I'm going to start with the military. This is a threat on the ability of us to be protected from enemies external. Who benefits? The rest of it is by compulsion. The rest of it is by getting the community to get along, go along, because all the leaders in industry, all the leaders in the sports community, all the leaders in the college campus communities, they've all taken it. What's your problem? Why aren't you complying? What's wrong with you? Okay. You're a threat to everybody around you. You're a threat to the world. And they're trying to intimidate you and coerce you and shame you into doing something that makes zero medical sense. Not a little bit of medical sense, zero. Listen to that other video. Think about what's at stake. I believe you'll come up with the right solution. And when you get right down to it, for you folks in the military, even you folks that are in the policing units, turn your brain on, do your research, watch that video and some of the other ones that they have linked to it. There's plenty of people with credentials to outer space, not riffraff, not fringe, very mainstream quality experts with real histories. And they're telling you that this is dangerous to a level that's almost incomprehensible. You cannot be forced to take something that's experimental. And there's no way that this is not an experimental item. You want to be a guinea pig? Well, okay. But the consequences are on you. You have to sign a release to do this. If you're going to release these people and you're going to be the experiment, then, have at it, go for it. But don't force the rest of us, and don't think you're going to intimidate the rest of us to just participate in it. And by the way, God's army has people that are awake. You're not a donkey to be led around by the nose. Okay. You've got a brain in your head. Actually go listen to other experts. Let them explain what they're seeing and why. They're out there putting their careers on the line.
I was going to say that. I mean, their credentials, everything. I mean, everything is on the line. They would have no reason to lie, for what they're finding.
Think about this. Well, I've got to be able to go to work. I got to be able to serve. I'm trying to get a higher rank. I got to make sure the family still has food on the table. I got kids. Okay, I get that. These guys do too. They have houses with mortgages. They've got retirement funds. They've got a career to protect. They've got publications they're trying to do. They got kids. Okay. They've got, you don't get to the level that these people are at. Yeah, he's got a big house and he's in the golf club and everything else. Yeah, well, how much of his life did he sacrifice through all the internships and education and everything
Right.
else to get to that level. Okay. Maybe he's earned it. Maybe he's worked a little harder and focused a little longer and put a lot of stuff off in order to be able to have those things. I'm not going to hold it against him. And he's putting them all in line, not just one, but multiple. You don't realize how many of these people have been ostracized from the medical community because they won't go along. Because this is, you know, in Germany, there was a group called the White Rose Society. They wouldn't go along with what the Nazis were trying to force on the population. It wasn't until after the war that they were seen for the geniuses and for the focus that they had to do what they did. The biggest difference here is that we have a very large community here that's getting it. The question is it large enough? You have to be counted early. We just have to put the brakes on, stop, whoa. We don't have to go to war with anybody. We just have to stop. Say, no, I will not participate. Civil disobedience, there's times when it's appropriate and required. We have to lock arms, close ranks, make a community decision. And by the way, a lot of that decision is in the churches. I know of pastors who have ridiculed and badgered people in the church from the pulpit about not complying and going along. It's their social responsibility, blah, blah, blah. Who's running those guys? They get in these little social groups and they even get positions in government agencies, and they get all these accolades because they're working for the good of the community and they're going along and everything else. Excuse me? Who are you listening to? Go listen to these doctors and tell me that that makes sense to try and get your parishioners to participate. I'm going to war with those pastors that are saying that from the pulpit. If your pastor's saying that from the pulpit, you need to challenge them. Have you listened to these experts? Are you an expert in these things?
Yeah.
That's true. That's exactly right.
And you know, Juan, you see a lot of odd things right now. Like from a historical perspective, there's a young girl, I think Rodrigo, I think is her last name. I'm not quite at the cutting edge of the music scene anymore, but she's 18, 19 years old. She has several of the #1 hit songs over the last year or two. She goes to the White House or whatever, has a sit down with Fauci, and they read tweets about how great Fauci is and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, do you really think this 18-year-old girl has an interest in health awareness? You know, I mean, these people are hired to do these things. When you see Fauci on stage with TD Jakes at his church in Texas, promoting the vaccine, elevating, lifting up Fauci's position, you know, it's not because he woke up one morning and said, you know, I should do my part to help get people vaccinated. No, it had nothing to do with that. These guys are rented. They're rented for a mission to create influence, and people got to wake up. Who's influencing them?
That profession's been going on since the beginning of time. Okay, and it actually goes by a very specific name. And if you've got pastors that are prostituting themselves, maybe you need to find a different church. I mean, I'm very serious. I am totally serious. That is, I mean, you can go all through the Old Testament. You had leaders in the temple who brought in the tower god monuments into the Holy of Holies. And then they were bowing to the rising sun, Horus, and turning their ass to the throne of God. But they did it behind the wall. Nobody knew what was going on. It wasn't until God caught up Ezekiel in the spirit and showed him what was going on inside this inner court, out of sight. Is that going on in the church of government? Is that somehow found its way into our churches out through across society? It does not make sense to do what we are being compelled to do. What community is going to rise up? I believe part of that is the sports community, and it's happening right now. They're saying we're not going to do it. Well, it makes perfect sense when you listen to these doctors and the risks going on. When you see the lawsuit out there in California and other suits that are coming on, when you listen to the attorneys. And by the way, the court system is broken. That's one of the things that the attorneys are pointing out to you. They're having to fight their way the whole way through. So while that fight is going on, that may take decades to sort out. Well, I guess I have to go along with the experiment. We'll find out how it works out. Okay, well, if you're the one that can't have kids later because literally have a limp dick and your testicles are falling off. When the kids went into Babylon as slaves, the males were castrated. Daniel was castrated.
They were.
He was castrated. Who's chemically castrating our young men? Is that the purpose of what's going on here? That is literally what we're talking about. Go ask Michael Jackson.
For something that is highly survivable in the demographics that we're talking about.
Okay, and the former president gave you the example. You can get past this with simple quinine-based stuff that's out there available. This doesn't make sense. I've got to wrap it up. I've got to get to this next slide. And by the way, okay, let me just mention one last thing. Over the next few days, you've got a lot of stuff in the news cycle about the event that Mike Lindell's doing up in South Dakota. Look, I just want to say this. There's a lot of people who are going to be able to throw all sorts of stones that he went quickly and early and, didn't have it all sorted out. My first inclination personally was in talking with various persons involved, including Mike directly. Maybe we need to do a fly around. We need to push this off a little bit and formulate and research the data a little bit better to make a more precise case, a better developed case. Part of the problem is so many of these things are coming down so quickly. There's so much at stake that getting this stuff to the public as quickly as possible is probably the correct decision. And while I would love to have a perfect world where we had everybody on it and had everything exactly correct, the circumstances are we're at war. And so we'll go listen. We'll listen to what's presented online, all the various places it's going to be available.
And we'll link that up down below. People can find that August 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Yeah, it's going to be a major event.
It'll be on Frank's speech, but it'll be rebroadcast in a lot of places. But you need to. We'll fill this in with make it easier for people to find that.
Well, and the one thing I want to say is this. I think you have to understand, just like these doctors put it all online. Mike put it all online.
Yeah.
He's racing to get as best we can what's out there to the public and get more eyes on this. And there are certain constraints about what can be presented. And I know legally behind the scenes from the Homeland Security side, there's certain aspects of what is there that as much as many of us need it for legal purposes in various of the states where we have things going on, that a lot of those blocks have nothing to do with Mike or the people associated with him in presenting this. These were issues that were held back for legal reasons back in the agencies that cybersecurity agencies that control and overlook some of this. So for legal reasons, in order to not have people getting packed off to jail, they had to wait for certain authorizations. And so if there's some limiting in how quickly this can be put out, I understand that. There was also some stuff, even talking with a couple of the technicians involved over the last few days, there was stuff that I have very good people on my staff, and they had concerns about certain areas. And I came back and said, yeah, but look at this and look at this. I mean, my guys tell me we got a problem here. And then once it was properly explained, I think everybody was satisfied. I think one guy still had major concerns. And I know over on some of the stuff with Mike's people that there is still concern on getting it sufficiently built out. But I know they worked out, every second of every day since they got to this certain clearance that happened a little over a week ago. So with that in mind, the world's going to be watching. There is some mischief intended to disrupt that on a couple different levels, and we're aware of that. We'll power through, let Mike go do what he's going to do. We'll be watching from across the world, across the country. We'll have our prayers there to support him. I know that President Trump was very supportive for him to be able to move forward on this when we met here several weeks ago. And so my hat is off to Mike, putting it all on the line out there. I'm not rushing to any judgment. What gets presented, and some of it's outside of Mike's control. So I will be there emotionally, mentally, watching with the rest of us on the screens as they present this to see how they play it out. We need to not be there judgmentally in a way that is not understanding that this is a fellow American putting it all on the line for the rest of
his own money. He's
everything,
because he doesn't have like a government grant or anything, does he?
No.
Or he didn't get a loan from the government to do. I mean, this is his own reputation, his own money. And again, you look at who is risking what. This, you mentioned the doctors a little bit ago. You look at this.
They're risking.
People love to say, college students love to sit in classes and say, well, if I was alive in the 1860s, I would have been an abolitionist. I'd have been living in Savannah, Georgia, and I would have been freeing slaves. And it's like, well, what are you doing right now where you're risking your own reputation? You risk your physical well-being. What are you doing right now that's risking your finances? Like, what do you have on the line for any facet? Are you doing a Jim Caviezel movie? Are where right now in 2021 are you showing up to do these things? It's easy to say 1860, I would have done this, but what are you doing in 2021? These guys are doing it.
Yep. They're going to be written about in history books for sure.
They're at least showing up, whether you're a fan or not. I mean, I love the fact that he loves his country enough to put all the chips in the middle of the table to do what he can to try to save it.
Yeah. And again, I think one thing is we all have to understand, you could name dozens of people that have done similarly in their own lane. With the doctors, the military guys, are going to be called on to have to make a decision. Am I good with what's being forced here or not? And how do you respond and react to direct orders, and the mental gymnastics you have to go through to decide, is what I am being directed to do actually a lawful command? And remember, this isn't just patty cakes. This isn't about whether or not I get a new rank or I get favor in my file. For some of those involved, it'll be life or death. We're being called on as a Christian community. Very few times do you get to actually stand up precisely for right. You think that as a kid, you have to wash the dishes. You got to show up and do this, some minor thing. And that's like, serving God.
Right.
Well,
it's everything.
Right now, this is a subject where it's life and death. Other people have said, I'll put it on the line. I guess I don't have money for the mortgage this month. I guess my retirement is going to get cut short. I guess I can't go to work as an airline pilot. Lots of different industries. Other people are standing up and being counted. Going to war sometimes doesn't mean taking up arms. It means taking a stand.
Yeah,
and
it might mean just not giving up your seat on the bus. I mean, it might mean whatever it does in your time, but peacefully non-complying with tyranny is always going to be looked about properly.
Yeah,
being salt and light. The direction to the disciples, to those following as Christ ascended into the heavens. Occupy until my return.
Yeah.
You're an occupying army.
Yep.
Act like it.
Man.
Last thing I want to say, I get it. I have so much concern, angst for those people who are going to have to make very hard decisions. But you know what? History's watching. Those that went before us may be watching in that stadium in heaven. And those that come to life, generations to come, will either bless or curse us. And some who will never get a chance to be born because of decisions people make right now. This is a weighty decision. You gotta think about it with more weight. It's not a trivial thing. This is the moment you slow down, say a few prayers, think about it, think before you act. This is not a ready, fire, aim situation.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what you're being compelled to do. Think about the influence that you have on people around you. What if you make it and you're just fine, but others around you, because you do it, they go ahead and do it anyway, but they're not able to take it. They're not physically in the same position as you are. And by the way, this targets healthy more than it does sick. That's the wild part about it. Think about it, pray about it, go listen to this other podcast, share it, talk about it, and let's do the right thing.
That's great.
Juan, thanks for your time.
So much.
Thank you for loving our country and doing everything that you're doing to save it. It's taking all of us. I'm glad that you're alive right now.
Me too. Honored to partner with you, and so excited to get this message out. Thank you so much.
All right. And by the way, just because I got to do it, there's still some of them left. Get your second edition of the book. It's still out there. And isn't that,
That's beautiful.
Melania didn't get her magazine cover. I think she got the greatest magazine cover out there. By the way,
I think she did.
I put a thing,
that is beautiful.
I put the thing out. I was looking for one of those dresses, and I was able to get one. I think we might even have two that we got. And it's amazing. After I put the request out, we had several people that found some. So I'm very thankful for that. We had looked and looked, we couldn't find one. So the audiences out there helped us find some of those dresses. And so they'll go in the museum.
That is great. That is great.
Well,
safe travels. Thank you again, Juan. We really appreciate your time.
It's going to be very interesting over the next days and weeks. And I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk again. Be in prayer. We're all in this together. Think and act and operate accordingly with everybody else's best interest in mind. And don't do something ill-advised just to get along, go along. This is one of those moments you got to slow down and prayerfully consider the true consequences, the potential consequences, and do the right thing. All right, folks. Talk again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Before we let you go, there's a message coming up. We want to almost say a public service announcement. We're an important moment in U.S. history. And August 10th, 11th, and 12th, there's going to be a cyber symposium. You may have heard of it. You may not have. But let me roll out a little bit of what's coming up for Mike Lindell.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm coming to you with the most important commercial that I've ever done. All of you know what MyPillow and myself have gone through in the last 5 months in my efforts to bring the truth forward. Well, it's all come down to this. I'm having a cyber symposium on August 10th, 11th, and 12th. This historical event will be live streamed 72 hours straight on my new platform, frankspeech.com. You can help by getting everybody you know to go to frankspeech.com now. To help support this Cyber Symposium event, I am offering some of the best prices ever on MyPillow products, but they're only offered at frankspeech.com. Go to frankspeech.com now and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below to receive these exclusive MyPillow offers. Thank you and God bless.
Wow, that's going to be a great event.
You're going to want to plug into that. This is a historical moment, but people have to see it. Just knowing the truth, but having it be suppressed, have it be hidden, have it not be acknowledged is not going to get us where we want to go.
Right.
August 10th, 11th, and 12th, support Mike Lindell. Go to frankspeech.com. You can go to mypillow.com. You can get a discount code there with Flyover. But at the end of the day, we're doing this to save America.
Yep.
That's why we started this show. That's why he's doing the cyber symposium. We're trying to save our country, and if that's an important thing to you, check that out. And you want to be present when history's made.
That's exactly right. So thank you so much for joining us today. We bless you. We bless you to wake up, speak up, and show up. We bless you to realize you're important. You are here for a reason. Go out and make it a great day. We'll see you back here next time.
Bye-bye, guys.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Flyover Conservatives podcast with David and Stacy Whited. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave us a comment below. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's podcast, share with those who came to mind. Be blessed and make it a great day.